Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and we have a different crew, the young crew with us here today. We have, oh man, I'm going to get it this time. The black bibs and hand up gloves, Ivy Audrain.
Yeah, good morning. U23 squad.
Dang it, I got them backwards, didn't I?
Hand up plus the black bibs.
Shoot. Oh, it was close. We have Cliff Bar Racing and TrainerRoad's Pete Morris.
How's it going, guys?
It's good to have you, Pete. You snuck in just in time.
Don't tell anyone that I walked in at 7:59. I guess they all Pete, know now.
I think you might have to switch your microphone, by the way, because I think we might be getting your laptop microphone. And then we also have Orange Sealed Racing's Alex Wild.
Hey, everyone.
Good to see you, Alex.
Good to be back.
Yeah, man. Wow. You got back from a racing block. Pete, you sound amazing now. Wonderful.
Crisp, Pete.
Way to go. Cool. Yeah, it's okay. 1 minute to spare. We're here. All right. So a couple things before we kick off that I want to mention. Job postings. If you want to work with us here at TrainerRoad, it's an awesome team. I would love for you to apply. And you can do so at trainerroad.com/jobs. You can check out all the jobs that we have there. Also, an adaptive training update for you. We have added even more people to the adaptive training beta, constantly finding and improving that whole process of find a bug, squash a bug, and take steps forward. It's exciting stuff. Lots of people are using it and seeing themselves get faster. It's cool. I wanted to share one thing too, just an interesting insight that we got from David, one of and his team yesterday. They were pulling through and shared some stats with us. We want to share more data constantly going forward. We think that's something that we can do better on. So this is just a small little data point, and it's not with a massive number size, but a sample size that we took overall. But now that we're getting more and more people using Train Now, which uses similar logic to adaptive training, but is not adaptive training. But now that we have more people using it, we've been able to look at some of the data from it. And something interesting that I thought, so as much as we all think that we're the best at picking our own workouts, if people self-select a workout, in other words, you just go onto TrainerRoad and you scroll through or filter through and you just pick one. If you compare success rates of those or failure rates of those workouts versus failure rates of when people use Train Now, you are over 50% more likely to fail that workout. It's like 55, I believe, 55% more likely to fail a workout when you just pick your own workouts versus when you pick Train Now, which is kind of crazy when you look at that, right?
I mean, we shouldn't be surprised though, right? Like, if you know.
It's true. But there's cognitive dissonance for all of us, I think. We think, oh yeah, I can do that workout, and we pick it.
Pointy looks good. I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hurting today, so I don't want pointy, so I want smooth. And then we pick something like, I don't know, like Star King or something, and that explodes us because it's super long sustained work. So anyways, it's really cool to see. Train Now is helping more people get faster, helping them fail less workouts. And adaptive training is absolutely doing the same thing. As we get more data constantly on this, and we can responsibly filter that data to make sure that we're getting like a representative group and we're not missing some sort of big variable that changes the data in some way, then we'll be sharing that data with you as well. So anywho, it's exciting stuff. And we have tons of exciting things here at TrainerRoad coming. I've been working personally on a big project that should be coming through. Pete's been working on it too. A bunch of us here. So it's exciting. Stay tuned. We have big plans for that. Also, if you haven't used the app in a little bit on your mobile devices, you should, because there's a new iOS and Android app. And we talked about that very commonly here. So last thing is the Successful Athletes podcast. We're getting a lot of very strong and good feedback on last week's episode with Alex Sandylands. Alex, it was a fantastic discussion on cyclists' relationship with food. And Alex, thank you so much for coming on for that episode and being so transparent and willing to share, because it's already helping a ton of other people. So if you haven't listened to that, the link to the Successful Athletes podcast is in the description below on the YouTube video right now, or the podcast that you're listening to. You can tap that, go through and listen to that and subscribe as well. And if you're listening to this and you're not subscribed to the podcast or subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're missing out, and you totally should. So, Alex, you just raced in Fayetteville, Arkansas for the Pro XCTs, which for those that don't know, that's the premier cross-country Olympic, meaning like 90-ish minute mountain bike races on shorter courses where you do multiple laps within the 90 minutes. That's the premier series in the United States, the Pro XCTs. So you recently did that. and it was short track and XCO. The courses were totally different than I think a lot of the courses here in the United States for what we have. And it was there's a whole lot to cover. So the first thing I want to talk about, the courses were technical. All around Northwest Arkansas, they have professional trail building organizations that build these trails. And if you go there and you ride there, it will blow your mind. It's amazing to see how high quality the trails are, how cool they are too. They have like very creative, like huge, gigantic, almost like Burning Man art, but turns out that that's part of the trail and you ride that. It's just like, it's amazing. And the stuff they create is really cool. This course is no different. Alex, they had drops, big drops. They had really like they were man-made in the sense that the rocks were laid in, but like technical and rough, like climby kind of rock gardens. They had a lot of technical terrain to them. How did you, because you've mentioned before that you feel like fitness is like if you're a video game character, your fitness bar is high, but then your technical bar is the one that you're always investing in to raise higher as well. And that one is lagging behind, relatively speaking, to the uber high fitness that you have. So how did you approach that when you show up to the race and suddenly it's like, whoa, this is, and also more or less kind of one of your first races in a really long time too. You did Cactus Cup before it. What was the learning curve like? Technical terrain, how did you learn it quickly?
I think the goal wasn't necessarily to learn it quickly. So actually the first lap, I just went around the course. I had a coworker out there with me, Sam Benedict, who's really good at riding bikes. So it was nice to have him as well. But I actually just went around the course and took the beeline and everything just to take a look at everything. Like, what does the course layout look like? And then slowly, one by one, just started checking boxes. The nice thing, like you said, in Arkansas is there's a lot of trust in the trail builders that if you're going trail speed, then you're going to be okay kind of thing. So there was a couple, gap jumps and stuff like that, but it kind of takes a piece of fear away from it, knowing that they've designed it to be at the speed of this trail. So as long as you're carrying speed and you're riding along at a normal speed, you're good to go. They also had really cool, and I wish this was more common for people learning to do gaps and stuff, is they had their usual like two pieces of rock. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll try to explain this. So like your normal gap jump, right, would have a gap here, which is like the no-go zone. But what they have in Arkansas is the landing actually has this metal rounded piece. So you could almost just roll off the first one and you'd still make it. And then next time, like, oh, I can carry a little more speed. And then you land a little further until you get to the point that you're actually not landing on the metal at all. And you would have been able to do the original double. So it's kind of like a tabletop of sorts that kind of helps you learn.
Case proof.
Yeah. No lawyers
Pretty
needed.
Yeah.
Sorry, bad joke.
Oh man. This is no longer the U23 podcast. Dads have entered the chat.
Sorry, I apologize. That was terrible. I deserve to be punished. Alex, carry on.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me was probably the drops. There was two different ones. The first weekend had like the main drop that I feel like everybody's seen on Instagram and kind of like the marquee piece of the course. That one, it was more just like I walked up to it, saw that one, and that one I felt like was in my wheelhouse. There was no gap. It was very confidence inspiring to me in the terms of like the landing came all the way up to it. So it's kind of like you can just, as long as you're not nose diving off the end, you'll survive kind of thing. But it was, I don't know, it was a cool highlight of the mountain bike community. Like I said, I was riding with Sam and he pulled me off and I was like, oh, I got it. And then like I heard stories over the whole weekend where it's just kind of like you pass that on, right? Like someone leads you in and then you lead someone else in. There was one of the juniors from the bear team looking at it and she's like, that doesn't look so bad. Like kind of under her breath, like talking herself up. And I was like, no, it's not so bad. Like I explained to her, like there's no gap. You just have to carry speed. She's like, you're going to hit it again? I was like, I can. Like, she's like, oh yeah, will you tow me in? And man, the feeling of like when you go off and you hear behind you, yeah, it's just like so sick. So it's like, now she's hitting it in training and she'll pass that on to somebody else that is also needing help. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I really like that sense of community where everybody just wants to see people succeed. I did a post on it on Insta, but it's just like the second one got me because there's a gap to it. So it's like there's like a failure, right? So it's like for that one, I rolled up to it a bunch of times. I had a buddy, Noah Hayes, lead me into it a couple of times. And I just kept pulling the parachute. And it actually helped me on this one not to have someone in front of me because it was a blind landing. So as soon as I could see the landing when I was rolling up to it, I was like, oh, okay, I got this. And it was the same thing. As soon as I hit that one, someone saw me hit it and was like, oh, would you mind pulling me in? And I was like, no, not at all. And then, you kind of pass that on. So I feel like a course like this just makes the US better at XC, because I feel like there's that attitude of like you come to it and maybe you didn't feel like you could ride these features and then you go and ride them. And
Yeah.
I was trying to explain, I feel like there's 3 different levels of like mastery on these features. There's one where it's like, no, that's just over my head. Like I'm not going to try this. I'm going to do the beeline and I'm going to commit to that. And I was trying to make it clear to everybody, like I've been there, like I used to take the beeline at Missoula, like I committed to it and it's just like, the jump was just over my skill set at the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then the second level is like, I can do it in training when I'm fresh and, cognitively all there, but I'm going to decide to take the beeline in the race because when I'm redlined, I'm not confident in those skills. And then there's level 3, which is like complete mastery. I can do this when I'm pinned, when I'm fresh, and anywhere in between. And it's kind of trying to identify where you are on that spectrum, because there is a lot of power into hitting it in training and even not racing it, but just knowing, okay, that's in my skill level. What I need to work on now is being able to do it and make it second nature when I'm cross-eyed.
John, do you remember
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
I was going to say, do you remember the big rock drop at the beginning of Vietnam that Lee took us to and then made us do over and over in practice right at the end? We kind of like skirted around and practiced. And that was another one where I could do it over and over with Lee there and you there and us talking about it. And then in the race, I pointed at it and I was like, nope, I can't do it. And beeline it was very clear in the race scenario that wasn't going to fly, even though I could do it. I did it 10 times in a row in practice.
Yeah, there are differences between when you have that super high cognitive load and fatigue. Like your body doesn't function as well, first of all. Like it's distracted and fatigued. And then on top of that, you do have to I think that you reach a point, like you said, Alex, of mastery where you can have as much cognitive load as you need, but you know that you can do it and you still do it. But even then, no matter what, your body is still not performing at its optimal level to be able to handle that obstacle, right? So it does change. And you see this like with BMX racers and they come into mountain biking in particular, or road riding or anything else. Anybody that comes from a really highly technical, high speed discipline and they come into something else, and that cognitive load is lower. So it's like they have like a bonus, they've like they're Mario with the mushroom, so to speak. They're able to go through everything just with a little bit more of a margin of error. So that is an interesting point. On with the technical side of things, there's also, Alex, like I said, you raced Cactus Cup before this, which was, I believe, a short track and XCO-ish, and then or an XC marathon, and then it was like an enduro format. So 3 days of racing. But this was like really high intensity XCO racing. How did you get used to the race intensity again? Because that is something that you can train and really do intense training and knock all that out. But it's different when somebody else is serving it to you dynamically in combination with cross country racing, because the course is also serving it to you, because you have to put out 500 watts just to get up something a lot of the time. Yeah. So how did you do anything in training, or did you do anything psychologically or physically to prepare yourself for the race intensity?
In training, we definitely threw in some more anaerobic style work. I think race intensity is always just a little bit of a baptism by fire. It's just you kind of go and do it because it's not up to you. This course was a really unique one in terms of, like, I think the longest climb was probably just over a minute kind of thing. So it's like everything is pretty much anaerobic when you're racing. And like the way it is like short track, for example, there was one main like 40-ish second climb and it was right after you descend. So it's like everybody's lined out. So it's like even if you're 10th wheel, you're probably already 5 seconds, 7 seconds back as you hit that climb. And it's like it's an interesting way to race, because no matter how good you are, if everybody's going flat out, there's no way you're putting 7 seconds on the best guys in the nation kind of thing. So it's like there's a little bit of a strategy there, like where can I make up this time that other people may be easing up. And like I experienced this the second time around short track, is I felt good, legs were there, but I couldn't move up because there was no lull at the front. That's kind of what you're betting on, right? Like it's like I'm going to go hard and then punch it over the top, and then the front group's going to look at each other and I'm going to make contact. And so it's kind of a little bit out of your hands, but as far as like the intensity piece, it's just like it is what it is, and you kind of have to just get back used to someone else prescribing your intervals.
Yeah, Pete and I actually, Pete held up his arm a little while ago, and you could see it. Pete, show the viewers on YouTube, and I'll explain. But Pete's in a removable cast, broken scaphoid, because he and I went out. Well, actually, had nothing to do with this. It was the after party that actually broke it.
The after party.
Yeah. But to try to get used to race intensity, because a lot of people listen to this, racing is coming back in a lot of areas for different people. So if you're in this area, this is one thing that Pete and I did. We went to a trail, like a loop, and that loop is far away from where like a high density of riders would be. So it's like a safer spot to be riding at race pace on the trails. There's not a lot of athletes out there. It's a little higher up on the mountain, so to speak, right? So we found a loop that was kind of like a cross-country Olympic loop. And then I had Pete ride the e-bike, and he didn't put it in eco mode. He put it in trail mode. And then there's boost on top of that, but he's in trail mode. And then my goal was to not lose Pete's wheel, but Pete also, you had to do some how did you gauge that, Pete? Cause you didn't just pedal all out, or else I would have been gone.
No. And that's what we did the way up the mountain. We kind of did like a 45-minute long climb in eco. And that was probably me doing endurance pace, but it was a lot more up to me to decide the pace. And with trail in the middle setting, I had a lot more leeway because the power was pretty consistent across.
Watts.
Yeah, I think it felt like 200 watts. So most of the time I could add, and I weigh a lot more than Jonathan, so I could add a couple hundred watts, and it would feel like I'm staying within kind of John's realm of what he can stay in contact with. And but it was really interesting. Having the consistent power was nice, but it was more the kind of the extra snap over the top of things and out of corners and stuff like that was much more painful to you, right, John?
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It hurts so bad. If you want to see this, by the way, let us know in the YouTube chat or in the YouTube comments below, because we did record this with GoPros. We could find some interesting points where we start to see where I start to explode. You'll be able to hear it. I'm gross panting into the microphone because I have the GoPro on my bars. But I wanted to have something where I wasn't dictating the pace, and that snap over the top of hills or out of turns or through steep sections, that sort of thing that you're subject to when somebody is faster than you in a race, and they're fresher than you, and they can just sprint right up that thing, even though you're right on the limit. That's the experience that I wanted to have. I lasted for 50 minutes and then I tapped out. It was so hard because it's you can't, and you'll see even in the recording, I never dropped below sweet spot. So for 50 minutes, I was sweet spot, or I was punching up to 600 watts with my FTP around 320 right now. So that's a really hard 50 minutes. It was painful, really difficult. But it was a great way to try to, just because right now it's tough to be able to go to a bunch of smaller races, because the smaller races actually aren't happening. It's the bigger ones coming back. But it was super helpful. E-pacing, I guess we call it, behind Pete. It's fun.
It was also nice that we found a technical sort of descent, or medium technical descent, that took some effort and some pedaling. So you didn't even get to recover during the downhills. And once we were actually flying, the downhills only took 2.5 minutes, right? Isn't that what we timed it at?
Yeah.
So out of the 15 or 20 minute loop, 2.5 minutes was descending, which is not enough if you're already on the limit, right? And
when you're descending, like you said, it requires focus, right? You could lose a front end at any point because it's really kind of slick and blown out. And there's jumps and berms, and you're pedaling out of each one of them and stuff. And you made me pedal really hard out of each one of them. So there's a lot of different ways, though. It's effectively the same principle as motor pacing, right? That a lot of people would do, but that's on the mountain bike side of things. But whether it's fast group rides or anything else, I do want to let everybody know that's excited and looking forward to racing, that you can find different ways to be able to familiarize yourself with it to some degree, like Alex did, incorporating more anaerobic efforts within his training, tons of different things you can do to get to that. Because you don't want to show up and just be like, all right, guys, sweet spot for 2 hours. Let's do this, because that will not happen. People will ride at whatever pace they want. So yeah,
I've heard requests that you guys need to take your turbo bike to California and we need to have
Ooh.
round 2.
that would be fun, right? Yeah, that would be awesome. Although Alex, we'd have to put you on a slow bike somehow, like an extra slow.
Can you ride
bike.
Can you ride your trail bike?
Yeah, we can put him on the Duro and on the S-Works and Duro, right?
And then he can try and keep up.
That would work. Yeah. Even then, he'll still be able to keep up. Did you do anything unique with your equipment, Alex? So this is like, once again, kind of like rainy-ish and sloppy-ish at times and kind of slippery. And also the terrain isn't like a bunch or long sustained climbs, but a bunch of rolling climbs. I don't know if you did anything different with equipment, but it could be interesting to discuss that.
Yeah, I was running some special tires. Wink, wink. Go take a look on Insta if you want a little sneak peek.
And that's Alex Wild MTB on Instagram, by the way. You can follow him there.
As far as like changing my traditional bike setup, I kept everything the same in terms of pressure and rebound. That felt good. I did run my brain both front and rear 1 click out. And what that does is makes it a little softer off the top and kind of, it essentially makes your sag a little more on the brain setup. So what that did for me is there was not really a smooth section on the course. And then I traditionally tend to do all my effort seated most of the time when it is smooth. So I'm not really losing any efficiency there, but just kind of gives you a little more safety on the descents. And then, like Jonathan said, there was a key section that was actually a climbing rock garden. And it kind of just allows you to more like float up it rather than getting bucked by those rocks. I ran higher tire pressure overall, but also a bigger gap between front and rear. There were a lot of G-out sections that you tend to be very rear heavy. So what I did to protect against blowing out a tire there is I ran higher pressure in the rear than I would, but also like I normally run a 2 PSI difference front and rear, and I was running a 4 PSI difference in the race. So I was running 1822 on 235 tires.
And no inserts, right?
No inserts for me. Orange seal, obviously. So trust there. But and then I ran ice friction chain, which I always do when I'm racing. So that's a wax chain. I've talked about it before. Just an efficiency piece, just saves some watts. And beyond that, everything was as I train. I try to change things as minimally as possible, kind of across the board, nutrition wise. Like that's why I have pancakes before every key workout. Like pretty much an interval session is the same for me as race day. That's another thing I was thinking of when you were asking, did you like refamiliarization with race intensity? If people aren't like doing their race setup for training, I would suggest it a couple of times, just kind of running through, like I've definitely gotten to the start line and been like, I didn't have any coffee, stuff like that. It's kind of like if you're trying to like do certain things like, okay, eat this and then, this is your setup, try doing that in training first, because then you'll miss something in training. You'll be, okay, I won't do that on race day. Again, like a cognitive load thing, like on race day, you're everywhere. So just having that routine dialed is super helpful.
Yeah, that's because then that allows you to reduce the panic or cognitive load you might feel when you jump back into that new race, right? So the other thing that I want to talk about is your call up and pacing strategy. So this is a UCI sanctioned race. So then as a result, they have like points based on UCI points, and that's how you get called up. You didn't have a good call up, and I think that they like randomly sorted you. So how did you adjust your pacing strategy when you don't have a good call up compared to the theoretical situation of you having a good call up?
Yeah. I approached the first few as just like, it's kind of a fun challenge. So I think it was like a 75, 80 person field. And I want to say like 20, 25 had UCI points. That's just because so for the past year, the UCI didn't freeze the points and there was very limited racing. I made the personal decision not to race. I have a real full-time job. So I don't feel the pressure to compete. And I just felt for health and safety, and also the health and safety of others, that, until we were in a better spot, I didn't want to race. As a result, I don't have a world ranking at the moment. So there's a few people who went to Pan Ams earlier in the year. Keegan and all them did the World Cups last year, which also are included in the UCI rankings. So beyond that, they decided to do random call-ups, which was, it's a fair decision, right? It just, you can get the short end of the stick with it. And I seem to, every time besides the last time. So I got, I think 52nd was my best call-up all weekend, and on a very not pass friendly course. So it's just kind of like, okay, I'll just chip away at it. And my mental goal was just to ride consistently, to try to hit consistent laps, and just to slowly pick people off. Like, I wasn't trying the superhero move of just sending it to the front on that first lap. And it worked decently. I got 22nd in short track and 17th in XC on that first weekend. And then on the second weekend, I had a hub issue, and had to pull out of short track. And then obviously in XC on Sunday, I had my back issue. So the races I did finish, I was pleased with where I ended up, but a little frustrating because that XC on the first weekend, 20 seconds faster would have got me a UCI point. So
yeah, so close, right? So let's talk about that really quick on the managing the unexpected disappointment. Because in the past, you've had issues with your back locking up, and it's really because is it a herniated disc that you have?
Yeah.
And then, so that ends up causing, that used to cause more issues. Then you introduce strength training, and then that ended up really kind of helping with that. It cropped up again and it bit you. And a lot of people listening to this have had a race where, like, you've had something come up, it's unexpected, and it's super frustrating. And how did you manage the unexpected disappointment? And how are you managing it? Because it's probably still ongoing.
Yeah. I will say I may not be the best example for this. I definitely got super upset. I put a lot of pressure on myself in terms of just like, I know what I'm capable of, so that's what I want to achieve. As a general rule of thumb, I give myself what I call the 24-hour pity party. I give myself 24 hours to just like, life sucks, like this is the worst, like I'm bummed out, like whatever that may be, and just like, don't judge myself for having negative thoughts, and just kind of let them flow through and just experience them, I guess. And then from there, I guess I move into what's like the planning phase. Okay, like we've had our pity party, like the world's the worst, you got it. Okay, now what can we do to move forward? How can we fix this? What's the next steps? Like, check in with myself. It's like, do you still want to race? Do you still like racing? Like, is this what you want to do? And like this time around, obviously all the answers were yes. So it's like, okay, what can we do? And so we pivoted. I will no longer be going to Europe for the World Cups. It seems like a big risk in terms of the effort I'd have to put out to get that Olympic spot could spark up my back again. So what we're going to do instead is we'll do the Soho Pro XCT in Utah. And then we're considering the Wisconsin Pro XCT. And then from there, I'll do Missoula in June, which is kind of like the next 2 months scheduled out. So Ivy and I will hang out in Missoula.
Yes. So hyped.
I think all three, well, not Pete, but the rest of us here, all three of us are racing in Utah, vaccinated and ready to race. Look at us. So
heck yeah,
it's exciting times. Awesome. Well, Alex, thanks for sharing all that stuff. It's cool to have these learnings. And if people have other questions for Alex, just get a hold of him on Instagram, AlexWildMTB. And Alex is super transparent and sharing all that stuff. So
yeah,
you can go on
feel
there
free to shoot me a DM, or every Monday I do questions so that people keep me occupied while I have a day off the bike. So those are always fun to read. And if you have any questions, just every Monday I'll throw that up and you can slide in there.
Awesome. Pete, we've gotten a ton of questions on outside workouts recently, and lots of them. And it makes sense because the weather is getting better, right?
It's the time.
It's the time, indeed. So Pete, let's, and Ivy and Alex, let's all talk about outside workouts for a bit. And how to do them, some tips. We get a lot of questions on people asking, like, I go outside and my power's all over the place. What's going on? Or do you have tips to make them easier? They're tougher, or whoa, I'm really able to do more. Lots of questions. So we're just going to go through a basic walkthrough here on how to do them within the context of TrainerRoad, and then how to do them in general in terms of principles. So first, with TrainerRoad, outside workouts exist for almost every workout that's on your calendar when you're following a plan. If it doesn't, then you should reach out to support and let them know, and then they will get that sorted for you quickly. But in almost every case, you should have them. The way that you actually do that is when you have a workout on your calendar, you just click on that workout, and there's a little button that says outside and inside and outside, and you just click on outside. And then at that point, if you've synced your Garmin account with TrainerRoad or your Wahoo, that sort of thing, it just automatically sends over to your head unit, and you turn on your head unit and everything just works. It's pretty cool. As long as your head unit has time to sync, by the way. So that's how you actually do them there. And there's two different ways you can do them. A lot of us don't have power meters on our bikes that we would ride outside. We might just have a smart trainer inside. So in that scenario, what we've done is each workout not only has power, like it's an outside power based workout, but we also created a written RPE based version of that, meaning that you have 1 to 10 rate of perceived exertion targets instead of power targets for those intervals if you don't have a power meter. That is actually a really good way to train for people that don't have a power meter outside. You can still get a huge amount of bang for your buck for doing that sort of thing. So if you don't have a power meter, you can still do it. Just below that toggle where you switch it to outside, there's another toggle where you can say power based or RPE based, and that's how you can do those. Let's talk about setting up the head unit first. Alex is, I don't comprehend how he does this, but he keeps his power on 1 second smoothing. Is that right, Alex? Like instant power? You just see the power?
Yeah, I'm a robot. So, I mean, I let my legs do the smoothing.
Oh, goodness gracious. That would blow my mind. I couldn't do it. The number would just constantly be bouncing everywhere. Alex somehow is able to like spreadsheet math a rolling average while he's looking at it.
That's exactly how Alex is intervals. It's just like,
Alex is a
5-minute interval.
He's a smooth brain, and his brain smooths the power for him. Get it?
His brain is smoother. It makes sense.
Yes.
I smooth all of my outside power to 10 seconds actually outside. And I found that it makes it easier for when I'm trying to adhere to specific targets or within a range. But 5 second, 3 second, you have a ton of different options, and you can explore any and all in between that. But that's one of the things I do there for sure. Pete and Ivy, how about you? What sort of smoothing do you usually like on the power outside?
Pete does 5-minute smoothing.
Yeah, a 16-minute smoothing. No, I like to correlate my lap power in 3 second or 5 second, depending on like the length of the interval. But I really like to have both because, one's where you're going and one's where you are. So I can kind of meter my efforts a little bit more. But again, I think we'll talk about it a little more later in our experiences, but I also try not to look down so much so that I'm not compensating for what I'm pedaling at this second. And then, it's really
constantly
about
chasing it.
Yeah. As the power drops, I'm like, all right, 500. And then it's like, oh no, take it off. And then 200.
200, 500,
Over
200,
under,
500, 200. Yeah.
That's all my workouts.
How about you, Ivy? What do you run?
Yeah, 3 seconds for me.
3 seconds.
And it took a while to get used to. I think that when I first started riding with a power meter, I should have had a little bit more generous of power smoothing so that I wasn't chasing it all the time. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for not staring at the power meter and like learning what that effort feels like and then sitting in it instead of just, like fixating on how that number is changing and trying to match it.
I feel attacked.
But it's so true because let's just talk about that right now. That like safety first, right?
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. But safety first, right? That's like so important. And if you are just staring at the numbers on a road with traffic, it's not safe. Don't do it. Don't let your power target put you in an unsafe position ever under any circumstance. Right. So there's that. And really Chad has mentioned this so many times, but all data should just inform perception. Right. So, and what you do is you use that data to constantly adjust your perception. So what I do, like when I start out my interval, I'll start out at what I feel like and I think is going to be that target, which by the way, over time, you'll like really surprise yourself and you'll be able to like, when it's 242 watts and that's the obscure target for that interval, and you'll start out and you're just like right at 242, you should pat yourself on the back. That feels pretty cool. So, but over time you'll get there. At first, it will feel really hard to figure it all out. But when you tie in that feeling to the actual power target, and then you just occasionally check in on that to make sure that you're still close, that's really the sweet spot that you want to be within. No pun intended there.
Absolutely.
I need to clarify for that terrible bad joke earlier, or dad joke. I need to clarify when it's not intentional. So
just
Alex, sorry.
Naturally.
It's true. It's true.
I was going to ask, and I'll do a quick fire in the middle of this. Elapsed time or time remaining for interval? What does everybody run?
Yeah, so there's two different ways. Actually, Pete, let's just get into the Garmin head unit and Wahoo head unit setup discussion, because that addresses that very thing, Alex.
Yeah.
So I'll take on the Garmin one first, and then Pete, do you want to do Wahoo after that?
Let's do it.
Garmin is more capable, but more complex. So you can do more things with it, but there's also just some things to know. So for the Garmin Edge 1030, 830, and 530, there's certain data fields that you can use that are really helpful that you don't have on other head units, including watches. So for the 1030, 830, and 530, the fields, and we actually have a link to this in the description below. So go click on that if you want to see that and listen to us talk about it right now. But there's a link to a Help Center article called Creating a Custom Garmin Screen. And within that, we talk about the fields that we recommend building, because Garmin has their own workout screen, but it only shows you your average power for that interval. And then it shows you, has kind of like arrows that are kind of like sliders to show the range that you should stay within, and then a very zoomed in view of your interval. And that's all you get. And we probably want to see things differently, especially if you've trained with TrainerRoad, then you know of the value of having like this very basic, but focused and still capable setup in terms of what data fields you have. So the data fields you can have for 1030, 530, and 830. First one is called time to go, and that's nested under the workouts category when you're building out this custom field. And now that one will show you how much time you have left in the interval. So that way, to answer your question directly, Alex, that way it's counting down. That's familiar for people that are used to TrainerRoad, right? You can also count up, and we'll cover how to do that in the different head units in just a bit. Then you also have one called target, and that target data field is within also the workouts category. And that will actually give you a range. So we'll prescribe a target, but then it will give you a range for that target. And that's something, Pete, you mentioned that you always try to stick to. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think that's something everybody should stick to, is trying to hit a specific, like 242 for your 16-minute interval. Is you're just heaping undue stress on yourself to you're going to end up pedaling too hard at the end, get that exact number, because if you don't hit 242, you failed. And it's fine, Alex. It's fine. We all fail.
I hit 243 just to make sure.
Yeah, every time. But if you follow the guidelines of our ranges that we show in our outside workouts, your life is so much easier, and you also are able to kind of deal with the curveballs that riding outside gives you. Which happens to me more often than I would guess, even on my very curated outside workout rides that I know everything about, everything that's going to happen. There's the mailman pulls out, or there's a school zone, it just there's never nothing that changes that. So when I give myself the 10 watts or the 15 or 20 watts, depending on the power target, your life is much better. And then you try to I would shoot for the middle and then try to bring it up a little bit at the end, rather than overshooting right from the gun. Because go ahead, John.
Sorry, Pete. I was going to say one big thing with this is people say, should I try to drag my average up or down, or should I just try to focus on the power target? And the answer is just focus on the power target, because the time at intensity is what we're going for. So let's just say for some reason you do have to stop and it drags your average really far down. So then for the rest of that interval, instead of sending it in sweet spot, you spend it in VO2 because you're trying to drag it up. That defeats the purpose of that interval, right? Taking the rest and taking the break is one thing. That's fine. just get back into it and try to hold that target. So that's why it's really important to have your target power and then to see what you're actually doing. Also, you'll see your lap power that you can track as well. So, and one thing to reinforce with this is target. Once again, this is a unique data field to 10:30, 5:30, and 8:30. And target is within that workouts category. And that's the one that's going to give you a range. So that's important. And it will become important once you get into the other head units in just a sec. Then you can have your smooth power to whichever smoothing you want, whether that's 3, 5, 10, whatever, or 1. It's Alex holding up 1. And then you can also have one on the, once again, 10:30, 8:30, 5:30 workout comparison. And this is cool because it actually shows a graphical representation of your workout. So you can see the graph down below, and it will zoom in on the interval and you'll be able to see how your power is tracking. So really familiar for people that are using TrainerRoad. And then we'd also recommend, if you're trying to replicate that, you can have heart rate and cadence, right? So what it looks like is a pretty simple data field. Actually, it's time to go at the top, and then you'll have your target thereafter. Then you'll have your actual power at the moment, and then you'll have the graph of the workout. Then down below, you have 2 little spots for your heart rate and cadence. So that's on the 10:30, 8:30, and 5:30. Now, if you don't have those head units, then there are different targets that you can use. What Alex is talking about, this one, so this is still under the workouts category. If you have an even older head unit, I believe that there's one called interval time, but I could be totally wrong, but there's something similar to that. And that one will count up. So you have 2 different options that you can use there. Then on head units that aren't the 30 series ones, you have a data field called target power. And that's within the indoor training. And that will actually give you a specific power target. It won't give you a range. So basically, when we give you ranges, it splits the difference and gives you the middle of all of that. So then that way you can have something, but still know that you have a range to be able to work with. And then it's the same after that, of your current power, smooth to whatever you want, and then your heart rate and cadence. So that's how you do it on Garmin. I'm sure that is terrible to listen to and to think through if you're just listening to the podcast. So I apologize, but you can once again click that link and check it out and set up your Garmin this way. It's really helpful to be able to do that. And then one other, just a couple pro tips with Garmin's, especially 8:30 or 10:30, 8:30, 5:30. If you swipe back to that Garmin screen and then swipe up, lots of swiping to do when you're cross-eyed in an interval. But if you do that, you can see where you're at in relation to the whole workout. Like you can see the whole workout graph and it'll show you how you're progressing through it. And there's also a previous, a pause, and a next button. So you can pause the current interval and then you can hit previous or next. But you can also just stop your head unit anytime that you need to. So if you have a stoplight, if you have something that requires you to be a safe rider and not continue at your power target, you can always just hit that stop button. And then you can just hit start back to it and hit start once it's safe to continue doing so. So don't worry. You don't have to my interval is started and you can't be like, hold on vehicles. I need to don't do that. Let your workout adjust around that sort of thing. So that's the Garmin thing and how you can do it. And I know Wahoo has an even easier way to skip back and forward, right, Pete?
It does. And I'm going to add one thing to your stoplight or pausing and getting extra time. If you know the route you're doing and you know that it's going to be pretty hairy for the next 5 minutes, just add an extra 5 minutes of rest right now, pause it, get to where you need to go so that the rest of your workout is as prescribed. I promise that's a way better way to utilize your time, and you're going to kind of maximize your actual workout like you want it to be, rather than pausing multiple times, worrying about the cars, stressing yourself out, trying to sprint away from stop signs. None of this ever works, where if you just say, it's okay, in 5 minutes, I'm going to continue the next 45 minutes of my workout. I'm going to do it as prescribed. And I do that probably half the time. I mean, I probably wiggle around in the workout half the time I go outside. And that's with picking very specific open-ended places where I know that the workouts are going to jive with the terrain I'm on. So it's like an exercise in flexibility and unwinding yourself into from the graph right beneath you.
Yes.
But yeah, we can talk about Wahoo. Actually, Wahoo's pretty straightforward. One of the things you're going to have to do, and with Garmin as well, is you do have to actually sync your Garmin account and your Wahoo account with TrainerRoad to make sure that that's actually pushing things across. And with Wahoo specifically, you pull down to kind of refresh any workouts that would be pushed to your head unit, and you have to be connected to the internet. a couple of those things really make a difference because you won't see your workouts if you don't do that. But one of the nice things is once it's in there, the Wahoo workout screen is pretty good. And it shows your target range, just like John was saying, with a range on both ends of the target power, your 3-second average, your interval time, like your elapsed interval, specific interval time, which interval you're on out of the number of intervals, your total remaining workout time, and your speed, and a graph at the bottom. And so part of the way that Wahoo does it is you can't take some of the specific workout page screens like you can on Garmin and add it to another page. So what I kind of do is I've done this both on the Roam and the Bolt, where I take kind of a complementary screen and I make it the following screen. So you get your the normal screen you generally use when you're riding, and then as you page through, you'll get to the workout screen, and then directly after that, I'll put more complementary information that I would want out of the workout screen. And then usually I just flop back and forth between the two. And so for me, that's 3-second average power, lap time, and usually heart rate and speed. I try to go fast when I do my intervals because that's generally what I'm trying to do.
When you race, right? Yeah.
Right. So higher speed, paying attention to where I'm putting down power, how fast I'm going, stuff like that. But I really try to focus specifically on each interval rather than the total workout. So I don't look at the total intervals remaining and the total workout time remaining. I always just try to focus on nailing this one specific 6 minutes, and that's the important part. And then you get to the rest, and then you do it again. And so kind of the way I've always found it to work the best is I start the interval with the workout page, wrap my head around what I'm trying to do, and then swap over to just the metrics that I care about for the next 5 minutes. And since I know how long the workout is or the interval is, pay attention. And then as I'm getting to the end, I swap back, make sure I nailed it, and then rest and do it again.
Yeah. That's a walkthrough on the Wahoo side, the Garmin side. Let's get into some of the execution stuff. We already talked about safety. We already talked about, making sure that you're tying and you're just looking at the power and then, glancing at that every once in a while instead of on it. But terrain matching, let's talk about that. So it really depends on the workout. So I have different areas that I will pair with specific types of workouts in our region. And also for those that are listening to this, for everybody, you may not have ideal terrain to do your outside workouts in. And that's just kind of the way it is. So I have like somebody reached out to me the other day and they were like, hey, I'm in a extremely hilly town. They were from over in Spain, extremely hilly town. We can't get anything that's, all of our stuff are 1 to 3 minute climbs and there's no such thing as a flat road. That's going to be really hard to do like TT training on, right? Because it's just, you'll constantly be chasing a power target. And chances are, if you go and do a TT, it's probably not going to be in that sort of circumstance. So that is hard. If you live in an urban area and it takes you a long time to get out of it, it's tough. So first of all, that may be the reality you're faced with. So with that in mind, grain of salt handy, I want to talk about how I pair a few things. So if I have short repeating intervals, but they have rest between intervals, I can do that in 2 different places. I look for something that's flat and straight and simple, because that's probably the most versatile terrain that you can deal with, right? Or I look for something that has a climb that I'm able to either repeat or a climb that's long enough that I'm able to do that whole set in. So I'll look at that set. And if that set is going to take me 15 minutes and I look at a climb and I know that, okay, if I went up that climb full gas and it took me 15 minutes, I'll definitely be okay if I'm just doing 30/30s up this thing, for example, right? You can also do the turnaround. So don't feel like you have to pedal in between intervals when you have like an on and then an off. Alex is known for making sure he's pedaling between those intervals because he wants to get the extra credit and raise the tide, so to speak, get more for what he's doing. But you don't have to. So if you're going up a climb and you only have like a 1 minute climb in your area, and that's the one that you have to use, just repeat it, right? You'd go up and then you coast down. And also, yes, the closer you can adhere to your rest targets, the better. Sure. But if you go 5 seconds under, 5 seconds over, 10, whatever it is, it's not the end of the world. You're still doing the work. And that's the important part. Like Pete said, the wiggle room is there and it's okay to use it. If you have short repeating intervals, but there's work between the intervals, that's where turnarounds start to be really tough. This is where you'll want something that is more consistent. So that's going to be a longer stretch of road that's flat and or a climb. Yes, it is easy and feels easier to do higher power on climbs for a lot of people because of the lower inertia. You have like more force per degree of that whole pedal stroke that you're applying. And it just feels a little bit easier for us. So that might be a case where you want to work that in. And then sustained intervals, I do think that you want to keep in mind the context. So since I'm mountain biking is my main goal, I don't try to do a lot of my work on flat terrain. I try to do it on climbing terrain because if I get really good at when I'm geared out on my road bike on a flat road and I'm doing fast intervals that way, that's great. But it feels really different when I'm on a mountain bike and it's a steep climb. So as far as climbs versus flats or whatever else, context reigns supreme for whatever you're going to be doing for racing. Would you say so as well, Ivy?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said for doing intervals in that kind of context. And there's maybe a stigma or people aren't necessarily excited about the idea of doing a ride that's like 5 miles from their house. And, they don't want to do that kind of ride because you just like, and then you get home and your family's like, where'd you ride? And I'm like, down the street, and
once again, I feel attacked. This is my entire riding experience.
So, I think there are ways to like keep those kinds of rides interesting and engaging. And the way that I like to do that is like, add an extended, like cool down loop somewhere like scenic and nice after you do those like repeats in like a kind of boring area. And like, yeah, I think that there are some of us that are a little robotronic that don't mind just like having a super controlled, interval ride and like being able to do that where, some of us or like time crunch people that like only have an hour to ride. And like, that's really good for them that they want to just go do those efforts and turn around and go home. But, I think there are other ways to like keep those kinds of structured rides interesting by adding like, an extended cool down or an extended warm up, going somewhere scenic. Ice cream stop after your interval ride. Like it doesn't have to just be like, go do the work and turn around.
Yeah.
I'm for the ice cream stop. I've done that plenty of times.
Alex, you and I have talked about like our ideal is when we can do something where it's like you go up a fire road and then you descend a single track, right? In between the intervals. To your point, Ivy, just because there's like a convenience level and you can do it one way, it doesn't mean that you can't think of ways to make it even better, right? You can find other ways for sure. One thing that I think is important to talk about too, Pete, you mentioned this, like a lot of people think of inside versus outside, like they're at opposing odds with each other, but we shouldn't think of it that way, right?
Yeah. And it's been something we talk about a lot, right? Like it's more structure is generally what makes you faster, and that's what we believe. And so getting people to find ways that structure works for them is the most important part. It doesn't matter whether it's inside or outside. It matters that you can find something that you can execute consistently, and that's when you're going to get the most bang for the buck. And for some people that's inside, for some people that's outside. For a lot of us, it's a mix of both. It's something that, like I think we said, it's just another tool to use in your toolbox of training. And that's a great way to think about it, where it's something you can opt for. And a lot of the times it'll be 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon. And I'm like, it's just too nice. I'm just going to swap to an outside workout and go outside. And that's all there is to it. It's just nice having that in your back pocket as something you can do whenever the wind takes you, I guess.
Yeah. Alex, I'm sure when you first started training with power that you experienced the same thing that a lot of people experience in terms of power was all over the place, right? Does it get better with time? And do you have any tips with that?
Yeah, I think it absolutely gets better with time. It's actually, and nothing against people who use smoothing, it's part of the reason that I don't, is I feel like if you put smoothing on your computer, then you don't smooth yourself in a way. So I feel like it made me better at adhering to power. And then I think Ivy mentioned it, there's a learning curve for her with smoothing, and now I'm just stuck in my ways and don't want to go through that learning curve. So 1 second average it is. I think it's just time. And then I think understanding we say it a lot, but that you're training energy systems and not necessarily this specific number. So it's like as like specific as 242 watts sounds, really the goal of it was like, depending on where you are. For me, it's like, that's just middle of zone 2 is pretty much what they're trying to get after. So trying to understand it in the grander scheme of things, and also giving yourself ranges too. One thing I wanted to add there is I would always make that range down. Like, I feel like sometimes you're like especially for like a VO2 interval, you're trying to push the upper end of VO2. So if you give yourself a range up, then you're tiptoeing into anaerobic, which can have negative consequences. So try to give yourself like 10 watts the other direction and kind of just play in that zone and not be so tied around that like perfect 242 or whatever it is. And I think just like now I could ride zone 2 without even looking at my power meter. And I bet you I could do it between 240 and 250 watts every day.
Mm-hmm. You just tie in.
I think it's just time. And I think Ivy mentioned this, but it's super important to like check in with the effort. I feel like so much of the time you have the endorphins of hitting power numbers, and you might have music in and you're jamming, like you have all these things, but don't forget to check in and be okay. Like, whoa, this hurts, or this is painful and hard, but wow, I can do it 6 times. It's an important thing to have in a race when you're like, I'm just tapped. And it's like, no, well, in training, I felt this way before, and then I can do it for another 6 times. So it's important to check in with what that effort feels like, because, you know, with the exception of a few courses, like we've talked about with nationals, you can't really ride a course to power. You have what you have and you race based on feel. So just kind of understanding what different zones and efforts feel like, and then also what your body's capable of. It's cool to see like you're on the ropes and then give yourself 2 minutes of recovery and you're ready to do it again. So it's kind of like thinking about that in a race, like, oh man, I'm smoked to the top of this climb. Like, oh, but I get this descent, so I'll be ready to go again by the time we're climbing. So it's just trying to check in with your body and what you're capable of doing is pretty cool.
Something else to consider too, ambient conditions can be a motivation for you to ride inside or outside, depending on what you are used to or what you're preparing for. If you are going to, you know, like last week's episode with Sophia and Russell, they were going to Puerto Rico. So they were like, probably not going to be riding outside in freezing cold. It would have been better, if anything, for them to ride inside and create a hot environment, right? But if you're riding outside, emulates what you're going to experience, and every time you ride inside, it's nice and cold, then, you know, you want to change that. So take that into consideration. Another thing too is there's a learning curve with this. It's a unique type of cognitive load when you're riding outside and you're trying to hold that power, and you're dealing with wind gusts and changing road surfaces, possibly traffic, changing pitch. It's a different type of cognitive load than what you're used to when you go inside. So if you are familiar with going inside and you're like, wow, I just don't seem to be able to hit the power numbers right when you start out because you're getting used to it, you might experience the same thing when you take things outside as well. So just keep that in mind. And then sometimes, you know, certain workouts are just going to be, you know, some of them are impossible. Some of them are going to be really hard. That's just the way it works. And the more complex the structure is, the more simple your terrain has to be, or the more allowing your terrain has to be, right? So usually they're going to be more difficult. Or like if you're riding threshold and you're doing it for extended periods of time, like you have like 30-minute threshold intervals, everybody knows that if you're riding 30 minutes over threshold and you have to spike like 5 minutes or 5 watts above your threshold for 20 seconds, that has a severe impact, right? So you have to keep that in mind. It might be tougher to do work like that when you're outside. And sustained work in general is just going to be more difficult the longer it gets, and like more precise it needs to be, or higher intensity it needs to be when you're riding outside. So some pro tips with this: using a gravel, this is Alex, you and I do this all the time. Using a gravel bike or a mountain bike can be helpful if you're terrain constrained, because you travel over that terrain slower when you have big knobby tires. So you get more time out of the same distance of road. So pro tip, if you are limited on that, that can be a really helpful thing. So another thing too, if you are finding that your power is bouncing all over the place and you just can't keep track of it yet, once again, you'll get used to it, but try to increase your power smoothing duration. A couple other things too. New construction neighborhoods, if you live in such an area that has those, they can be great if they've built the roads and then there aren't like construction crews in that part of that new neighborhood. They can be really good because it can either be flat and it can be like a safe 4-corner crit, and you can just do laps on that forever, or it could be one with hills. There's tons of options.
We get a lot of questions too about like safe, controlled ways to practice like cornering at speed. To like people are anxious about getting back into racing, and they're like, I haven't taken a corner at speed in like a year. So if you feel that's a good addition, you know, if you feel like there's a new construction area, or sometimes like business parks that are not active on weekends, like those kinds of settings where you can like see all the way through the corner and you feel like it's safe and controlled. Good places to also practice cornering at speed.
For sure. And then this last one too, it's in the end, you're just trying to get the time and intensity, right? Like you're focusing on the work. So if your TSS is a bit different, it doesn't matter, right? Ivy, like if it took you longer to get to where you need to start your workout and you have like a commute, so to speak, to get to the point where you can actually the good roads for training, it doesn't ruin your workout if that's longer or shorter, or if it takes you a long time to go back.
Yeah, I think that there's a pretty heavy misconception that when you're doing an outside workout, you need to adhere really very strictly to A, the warm up and cool down, and then B, to just the overall TSS. And really that's not the case. You should obviously keep it within like a general, general sliding scale. But the most important thing is those efforts and the recovery between them. And then after that, adding, if you have to take a little extra to ride to and from your interval spot. I know a lot of people that live in cities and urban areas struggle with that a lot. Like it's okay as long as you're staying within the general zones of recovery in your warm up. Focus on the intervals and not that overall TSS.
Yep. Yeah, Alex.
I was just going to add a couple of things on the mountain bike thing and adding fun to Ivy's point. I've done many times where you're like, the structured part is 2 hours or an hour and a half. If you end that at the top of a trail and you're doing your intervals on a mountain bike, then you can take the trail home. So that's kind of like your reward, like, oh, I did it. If there's no ice cream shop at the top, then that'll do. And then
that's the next big idea in cycling. Ice cream shops at the end at all trailheads. I'm all for
it. Yeah. And then going back to Garmin's setup, I just wanted to mention doing the workout within Garmin turns off the auto pause. So if you have auto pause on, it won't auto pause. So I found that out the hard way the first time I did mine, and my OCD went a little nuts. So there's that. And then I was just going to offer, I'll post up what my training screens are on my Garmin 1030, which is what I do all my intervals on my Instagram stories, and I'll archive it or whatever saves it to my page. So if anybody wants to check that out, then I can just share the ones I use. I have like an everyday one, I have an interval one, and then I have what I call bonus features, which is like climbing or calories or just like fun facts that I want to know about the ride.
Max power, obviously.
Yeah. So it's really all that matters. Just put that up there for every workout.
That doesn't need a very big screen for mine. Make it say 4 digits.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty in-depth walkthrough on outside workouts, and I hope it was helpful in various different regards for a lot of people. We've already used up half our time today. We're going to have to like rapid fire through the non-rapid fire for the rest of this one, but we can do it. I think we can, team. From Carly, she asks, I've been wondering this for a while. In cycling, we call ourselves a team, and in order for a cycling team to win, they must work together. However, when it comes to awards, it's only the single racer winner that gets recognized. Have there ever been any efforts to recognize the entire team's work towards getting their leader on the podium and showing that and show that cycling is more team-centered than most people realize? Thanks in advance for pondering this somewhat philosophical question with me. So I think that we should probably talk about like what, if you are in the privileged position to be a team leader, what you should do for your team, because it's true that only one gets recognized, right, Pete? But there's more behind that.
Yeah, and almost all race wins usually require teammates. I can't think of any at any high level that would require no help from teammates to get to where if you are in a position to win, someone helped you get there. And honestly, at least at the level that I ride at most of the time, there's a lot of credit given to teammates. There's a lot of post-race discussions where you kind of hand out praise. The race leader or whoever performed on the day usually talks a lot more about the support they got because generally speaking, they probably did the least amount in the race. If Amber was here, I know she would echo that the domestiques and the people who got them into the winning position generally are doing more work overall, and then it's just up to the person to kind of execute on the day or at the time. And so I promise, at least as far as everything I've seen, support is given out really heavily to the other racers, and I think that's part of the team camaraderie that it's pretty easy to kind of burn your race for someone else because you believe that they have a better chance. And it's really satisfying from both sides of things to burn yourself up for someone else and to have someone really give it all. And then it gets settled on your shoulders and you end up performing for them. So I think it doesn't get enough time in the spotlight, but I promise there's a lot of team good vibes happening after the race when everybody heaps praise on all the crazy things that happened, how you got there, and what everybody did that day.
Yeah. I think you even you shared a story at one point of a U23 world champ. He won world champs, got a huge bonus from this, and he ended up sharing it with his team. And keep in mind that that's not like when you're talking about U23 world champs, that's like a composite team for the nation. So they just came together for that one moment. And that rider didn't have to give that like signing bonus, that huge bonus away that he got from going on a team, but he still shared it with his teammates. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think that the prize money definitely gets passed around a lot. And I've won some money. I think it's really nice being able to give it out to the team. Like, it feels much more like a team. The team earned the money. You didn't earn the money. So it feels like you're sharing the money with the team. And a lot of people will feel either like they didn't do enough to earn the money and they'll opt out. It's like there's real honesty that happens when you're handing out hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars or whatever it is, where people will say, no, I didn't do enough to earn any money, or the leader can say, no, it doesn't matter. Like, everybody was here on the day. Everybody did what they were supposed to. Here's all the money. And I think that story is pretty telling, where the rider knew that they wouldn't get the crazy bonus for winning without the help of the teammates. And so really the money wasn't his without the help of the teammates anyways. So it made perfect sense to him to split it all out, because that's how he got the bonus.
That's a really cool story.
I know teams that have structures as well where like riders don't have the option to opt out, so that there's never any like narrative of like wondering if you did enough, opportunities for other teammates to be like, oh, I can't believe that person isn't opting out, like they didn't do anything in that race, you know? So it's just like blanket policy. We split prize money every time. That helps like foster more of like a team camaraderie in sharing the work and sharing the prize money, and there's no like bad narrative. It's pretty good.
Even if you aren't winning money and you're winning gels, share the gels. Like for a lot of us listening to this who probably don't have the chance to win money, whenever if I race with people, I've raced on different teams and stuff, and there's like beer preems and coffee preems, everybody loves to race for me then, because then they can just get them because I give them up.
You got so junior teammates too bad. They get beer and coffee.
No, I've been racing since I was a junior, thank goodness. But yeah. But I think that's just a thing that it goes a long way to recognize that all of us, I think we do recognize that it is a team effort, and road racing in particular. I do like how the USA Crit series does this. They really like their perspective long-term is they want people to show up to USA Crits and cheer for Team Cliff Bar or cheer for Legion or Butcher Box or any number of the other teams. And they want it to be like you go into the NBA and cheer for your teams, and you go to that game to watch those teams play. So I do like that. And they put a lot of emphasis on the team competition too. And I think that that's a really cool and an important thing that they're doing there. And the Hammer series was really cool, had some great ideas. So we should bring that back too. That would be fun. Pete, do you have something else to add?
I was going to say, let's just run a local Hammer series. We can just make our own crazy little circuits and put a video camera at the top, and boom, we got it.
Hammer. The 30-second narrative of what the Hammer series is and how it differs.
Oh man, it doesn't make any. The Hammer Series is a series of races, like 3 races that have non-traditional finishing point structures. So it's usually the first person, like a KOM. Every lap there's points on the KOM or points on the sprint, and it's small teams of 4 or 5. And the idea being it's more team oriented because not one rider can score all the points. And then your points accrue over the weekend, and then there's a time trial at the end, a team time trial. And I'm probably butchering many things about that, but that's the overall. That's generally what was happening. But it was very exciting because it was really unpredictable racing, and you couldn't kind of adhere to the normal cycling tactics. And all the pros said it was like the hardest racing they'd ever done in their entire lives. And I remember some of the power numbers coming out were like, it was like an hour and 25-minute race, and it'd be like 500 watts normalized for an hour and a half.
Insane.
And they're just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it was so much fun to watch. If you haven't seen it, you can go to YouTube and check out some archives on it. Let's go into Eric's question. He says, how do you teach yourself to push through the pain? And he says that in quotes too, push through the pain. When doing 1 minute max efforts, it feels like there is more power left in my legs, but my brain is shutting me down early. Ooh, this is a great question. And we don't have any science to back any of this up, by the way. So we should clarify with that. We're just going to share personal anecdote here. Pete, you mentioned that 1 minute efforts are the hardest things ever, right?
Yeah, that's like my Achilles heel as a cyclist. If they're 46-second efforts, I'm great at them. Like if all 1 minute efforts were 46 seconds long, I would kill it. And also even like 90 seconds and 2 minutes, I don't know, but I'm completely broken. Everything in my body shuts down. I could probably pace better, but it doesn't feel like I can. It feels like I'm doing it correctly, and it is impossible for me. If you want to drop me, just go for 48 seconds instead of 46, and I'm cooked. I got nothing.
Alex, how have you found yourself learning to push through the pain, as he's asking?
I guess this isn't particularly just to 1 minute efforts, but I have a few like distraction techniques, like smiling is one of them. It's kind of like doing the endorphin release backwards. Normally it's like, oh, you're happy and then you smile. So if you smile, it kind of tricks your brain to do it backwards.
Nice.
I'd look so creepy if I try, someone like see me do intervals, be like, bad idea.
Yeah. I look like a serial killer, but I'm okay with it. And then just like, I like having it on going back to the workouts. Like if you have like a minute effort, and you lap it, you get the countdown, like the doot, doot, doot. Yeah. So I feel like that kind of helps me. Like I just kind of go until I hear that and then go a little harder.
Nice. That's a good one. Go until you hear beep.
Yeah, exactly. And then using like sections on the road instead of actually like looking at the time. Like knowing, like if you've done a 1 minute effort on it before, you kind of know where you're going to finish. So trying to get there as quick as possible and hope and pray that the beeps happen before you get there. So yeah, I mean, 1 minute efforts are just a special beast. It just like every time I finish a max 1 minute effort, I feel like I need to take a dirt nap.
Yeah, it's so hard. Ivy, how about you?
I think that Eric, maybe, they're asking how you like teach yourself to push through it. And so I think there's maybe a misconception that is something that you learn. Like there are, like Alex mentioned, like coping mechanisms and like things you can like use to help make it feel better. But you don't like learn how to, I mean, you can learn how to suffer more, but you don't learn how to, you don't learn how to make those any easier. Like they're always going to hurt. Like they feel
the pain doesn't go away.
They feel the same to me from the first year that I started doing structured training to right now. It feels exactly the same.
One thing that I would add to this is I do find familiarity plays a role with this. If I'm not familiar with that sort of physical strain, discomfort, mental strain and discomfort of trying to do that, then it's much more difficult to push through that initially. But as I do that sort of effort more often, then I recognize that. And that's like what we talked about, race intensity, right?
Yeah.
And if you get to the point where you're getting used to race intensity, then you become better at dealing with that particular brand of discomfort, right?
Yeah.
But if you are unfamiliar with it, it really shocks you. And you've probably noticed this if you've been doing a lot of sustained work, then suddenly you do a lot of high intensity work, or flip the coin and it's the other way around. It's suddenly like, whoa, like this is so hard to do 20 minutes at sweet spot, because all I've been doing is chasing Strava KOMs in residential neighborhoods that are like less than a minute long, right? That really hurts then to go and do sustained work or flip it on its head the other way. So I think a lot of it is getting used to it. And also don't like Eric, don't feel bad for feeling this. Don't feel unique for feeling this as well. That's just the nature of cycling. It's always hard. And you get, yes, better at specific types of the struggle, but you never just fully overcome it. So anything else to add to that one before we jump into rapid fire?
The one thing I was going to say is that if you can get yourself to that point where you're feeling like you're shutting down more frequently, like pick 45 seconds and do your, I imagine this only happens to me when I'm going for a 1 minute PR. If I just do 1 minute hard, I don't feel this way. So do more efforts at your 1 minute PR pace that are 30, 40, 50 seconds long, and like John said, reacquaint yourself. And doing this the first time over the year, if you do them every week or two for the whole season, I guarantee it's going to feel the same, but you're going to be more familiar with it and you will be able to execute better over time. So it's just like you don't treat yourself with a 20-minute threshold block right off the bat. Start with breaking it up into 4 or 5 minute efforts. So do 4 30-second all outs at your 1 minute PR, and then go forward from there. And you'll be surprised at how far you can take yourself in, 6 weeks or something like that.
Good advice, Pete. I like it. Rapid fire section from Scott. I'm going to summarize. He's basically asking, standing desks, good or bad idea for cyclists? Do any of us use standing desks?
Lay down
I have
desk.
one. Well, lay down desk. You mean sitting on the couch and propping the feet up? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah.
Or like, honestly, sometimes just laying down and putting my computer on my tum and
Yes.
You got to recover, man.
That's it. And I think that is an important point to make with like the standing desk thing. Like it depends on your limiter, right? Like if you're really pushing yourself in terms of your stress buckets are full, then standing up and working is probably going to add to that and cause some sort of a detriment when you're really close to it. If you're not really filling that stress bucket full, you're probably okay. But if your hip flexors are just like crazy tight because you sit so much, and that's a limiter in another way, then you'll want to stand. So it's really about prioritization. But yes, anytime that you are standing, you could be, you're causing more stress than if you were sitting or laying down, right? Like the old adage goes. So in that case, yeah, if you're really trying to prioritize recovery, don't stand. But if you have really tight hip flexors and you have terrible biomechanics on the bike because of it and pain in your knees, then change it up. And when you stand, don't just stand still, right, Pete? Gotta move.
Yeah. I have a stool that goes up and down, so I can kind of sit like a bar stool height if I'm standing at my desk. And I try to change it up, and I probably only stand for 3 or 4 hours a day. And I save it for my focus time at work, so I can't BS when I'm standing because it takes work. And then usually in the afternoon, I swap back to sitting. I usually sit on the couch. I sit on the ground sometimes. I try to break it up because being in the same position at all times isn't good for your body, no matter what. You gotta spread it all out.
I agree.
Yeah, I feel like stand-up desks were really kind of sensationalized, or like became popular because people realized that like just sitting and being sedentary all day was a bad thing. So it's like, I think it's meant more for not people like us that are athletes and active, but there's a lot of merit to our, cycling specific like imbalances that can be addressed by standing up.
For sure.
You should stand up if you feel.
Yeah. And do what you feel like you should do. Right. So, okay. And we may have lost Ivy's connection. We'll see. She was having some connection issues there for a bit. So, okay. These are basically, some useless, but awesome rapid fire questions. First one, best kit color?
Orange.
Black. Alex said orange. Pete?
I guess black. I mean, As sad as it is, it really is the best.
It is. It's not fast in heat, but whatever. Ivy?
Black.
Ivy might not be able to hear us. So
I can.
We
Sorry,
have
guys, I'm
pixelated
dealing with
Ivy.
Some internet. Black. It's black.
Yes. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah,
All right. Now, worst kit color. I think brown. Brown is just not, I can't do it.
What about the Aja Dessert, like brown bottoms?
Oh, I can't do it. I can't do that. Yeah.
I think the worst one I've seen is that like skin color through the middle that just looked like they weren't wearing a kit. Like
that was
like a shade of brown, but I feel like that's even worse.
Yeah.
I think that gray can be pretty detrimental.
Yeah. It is weird.
Settings.
Gray does not look good.
Yeah. No.
I don't know why. Sorry, teams with gray kits that are listening to this. I just don't know why, but it's a strange look for some reason. So
I just read the rest of the question that you're not allowed to choose your own pro team kit. So
yes,
apologies.
This is true. I apologize, Alex, for not including that. Okay. And then this next one, road bike bar tape, preferred material. I don't even know. I just don't like really thick bar tape, but I don't like paper thin bar tape. That's my only thing. I don't like gigantic thing, like padded stuff on my bars.
I like sticky tape. I really like the Supakaz sticky cush.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's made of, but it's got a good feel whether you're wearing gloves or not, which I think is important. I think sometimes it like slips on skin.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I like riding road with bare hands, so I feel like something that feels sticky even when you're like sweating on it is nice, but not like coming off on your fingers. There's like a perfect middle ground.
Yeah. Ivy, how about you?
I think I just don't like cork. I just don't like, like I don't know what the like synthetic good bar tape is, like sticky bar tape is made of. Plastic, but I just don't like cork bar tape. Like it's hard to clean. Like it has a way of like fragmenting and peeling. I don't know. I just don't like cork.
Same.
I haven't seen cork on a bicycle in like 5 years.
Yeah.
I think.
Like cork.
I don't know where you hang out. Yeah, I don't know where you hang out, Ivy, but people they need new bar tape.
Ouch, Pete.
I'm with Alex. Wow, a lot of feedback. I love bare hands on good bar tape. I don't like wearing gloves, especially riding road. I feel like you're not connected with your bicycle.
Such a purist.
I do like
Pete over there.
Yeah, I do like the NV bar tape. It's kind of it's slightly less sticky than kind of the Supercaz real stick stuff, but it lasts pretty well. It does discolor. So you got to wash your bike, which is hard for me. So,
yeah, I like the MV tape too. I just put it on recently. I used to run the specialized HD tape. It's good stuff too, but that NV stuff is next level. I like it a lot. It's really good. Yeah. So, next one, I'm just going to paraphrase. Cole, you wrote in a question asking so I said at Leadville, people should probably use a 28. So your assumption was, well, then at my gravel race, I should use a 28. No, Cole. Probably a bad idea. A gravel race, you want to run a bigger chain ring than that. So just disclaimer there. But for like, there is no specific, basically the question was revolving around a specific gearing that's best for gravel. There is no one. You just have to look at the speeds and you have to look at the climbs. You have to figure it out from there. Usually err on the side of smaller. Let's just move on out of rapid fire. We had more that we were planning to cover. We have so many questions that we need to cover. So let's do that. Let's go into Matt's question. It says, Dear TR Brain Trust, do you have any tips for dealing with stress and anxiety in order to get better recovery? I came out of Sweet Spot Base 1 high volume with very solid gains and feeling great about the year ahead, but shortly after I started a new job, which has been super stressful. And he says super in all caps, so we can trust that it is quite stressful. He says, I'll often wake up much earlier than intended because my mind is racing with work tasks that have to get done. And my baseline mental and emotional stress level is certainly much higher than it used to be. I stepped back the volume to mid volume for Sweet Spot Base 2. But despite succeeding in a high percentage of my workouts, my latest RAM test suggested that I lost about 5% from my FTP. So I know stress is generally bad for recovery and performance, but number one, could it be enough to cause this very non-trivial decline? And number 2, do you have any tips or suggestions to better shut my brain off so I can sleep and recover properly? Thanks for the awesome podcast, from Matt. So to answer your first question, it could totally be causing this decline. It's any of us know this that have gone through a stressful time in our lives or had any sort of level of stress. If you just have a high stress life and it's unpredictable, then you're always dealing with like fresh and new stress. And that absolutely takes a toll. Like we quantify training stress, but that doesn't mean it's the only stress that exists. And that doesn't mean that other stress doesn't have an impact on our body. It all has an impact on our body. So yes, absolutely. Starting a new job. And it sounds like, not, waking up and constantly thinking, oh, what do I have to do? Honestly, I would expect that 5% drop for myself. If I was going through that, that would be really tough to deal with that new stress. Let's get to a second part. Any tips or suggestions to better shut off my brain so I can sleep and recover properly? What do all of us do? Alex, can you start us off maybe on what you do to improve your sleep?
Again, I may not be the best example for this. I feel like I'm quite talented at compartmentalizing. And so like, I guess you can call it live in the moment. Like I focus on what I'm doing at the time. So it's like, right now I'm at the TrainerRoad podcast. So I'm stoked to be chatting bikes with everybody here. And then after this, it's like I have some work to do. So it's like in that time, I'm focused on, okay, I need to get this done and that done and that done. And then, I have an hour spin later. And in that moment, it's like, I got to go ride my bike with Jen. So it's kind of like, I definitely long-term plan in terms of like, I know what deadlines I need to hit and what I kind of need to achieve each day. But I try not to stress about things that aren't happening right now or stress about things that are out of my control. So in terms of like, if I can't control the outcome of something, like it's kind of like my 24-hour rule. It's like I give myself a little bit of time to be upset about it, but then it's like I can't change this with my emotions. So it's kind of like I turn to like, is there action I can take that can, fix this or not? And if not, then it's like, okay, I'll deal with that when we're in that moment kind of thing. Like, I think my most recent one was I don't like needles at all. So Jen booked our vaccines knowing that I wouldn't do it. I would just keep putting it off to avoid the needle. So it's like, I didn't live that stress or anxiety until like the 5 seconds before getting the first round. So I think just for me, I try to recognize that stressing about it before time isn't really going to do much to affect the outcome or help me.
Ivy, what do you do to try to reduce the stress and enable more recovery, particularly from sleep?
This planning meeting, I should let our listeners know that this planning meeting was hilarious because Jonathan read this question. Everyone was like, Ivy, because everyone, like people that know me well know that I like love to like worry and stress about stuff that is not in my control, does not matter. Like cringy stuff I did when I was a teenager, like that keeps me up at night. Like, and it's something I'm working on. And I think that, this question for Matt is more about like something that's like seasonal, like a new job. But I know that I'm not alone in like having kind of like repeated kind of, constant like stress and worry. And for me, it's important to like, when I'm trying to go to sleep and trying to shut my brain off, to know that there's no like end point at which I like forgive myself, stop worrying. Like sometimes it means for me just distracting myself. And, I'm not a doctor or, I know that there's advice about like screen time and the way that it can affect your brain and like cognition when you're trying to go to sleep. There are some like settings on your phone that help with the blue light. But like for me, like I need to think about something else. And like there are other like puzzles or TikToks or music or like stuff like that helps me like get my brain out of that like worrying, stressed, thinking about tomorrow, like thinking about yesterday state that helps make me more at ease and fall asleep faster.
Nice. Good ones. Pete.
I think we talked about I remember talking about optimizing sleep with Nate like a year, or I don't know which podcast it was, but And I was like, I really try to prioritize my sleep and sleep 8 hours or 9, 8.5, and that makes a big difference. And so I did some sleep hygiene stuff and really adhered to a bedtime that's all the same. I always go to sleep at the same time. Sometimes I stay up like an hour or two later on the weekends, and it totally messes me up. Like once your body's in that real circadian rhythm, it doesn't respond well to changing things. So, but kind of the things I've perfected for me personally over the last couple of years as I've been trying to do this, and it is like a trial by fire. You just try things out and see what works over and over and over. And if it's not working for you, you get rid of it and you slot in something else. And so the three kind of really consistent things I do now, because as my brain is always going like 1,000 miles an hour, and if I think about things, I could just continue to think about them, and I can't stop. And so that definitely happens at like 10 o'clock at night or at 1 o'clock in the morning. If I get up and my brain's like, whoop, it's time. Like, let's go. We can think about all these things again. So I don't stress out about it, but it's really hard for me to like relax and fall back asleep. So the couple things I do is I have like that bedtime sleepy reminder at 8:15. And once that goes off, I don't look at my phone anymore. My alarm's already set. Everything's good to go. I get into bed. I most of the time I have a sleepy tea. I read for like 30 minutes. I read nonfiction, usually fantasy things that aren't related to the real world at all. So I don't have to think about anything related to what's currently going on in my life or the world. I just escape into this. Yeah.
He reads about Thor.
Just making sure. I have a notepad that with a pen, so I can write down stuff. Like if I can't get something out of my brain, I can write it down, but it's not doing notes on my phone, which made a big difference because I used to just write things down on my phone, but get back into the mix of things and look at my phone and all this thing. So, and then lastly, there's some like sleepy breathing exercises you can do where like you pretty much take really deep, full, slow breaths for some amount of time. And one of the nice things for me is the only thing I can think about when I'm doing that is that feeling of full breathing. And I can't think about anything else. So I get kind of more in the place of getting sleepy. And that's my current routine that works pretty well for me. But last night I couldn't fall asleep for like 2 hours because who knows why. It just was the way it was.
Podcast.
Yeah, podcast. Yeah. I knew I was going to be late.
That's how it goes. One thing that I do to help with this, Matt, particularly with the work stuff, is I try to solve all of this with planning. And while that may be a myth that I'm solving anything, hey, it works for me. And really, for me, my mantra is I have to be dumb enough to fool myself, right? So hey, whatever works. And what I do is I plan everything in my life in general. I have quarter, month, week, day. And the days add up to fill in the weeks, which fill in the months, which fills in the quarter. So, and when I do that, that allows me to have like a format where everything has its place and I don't panic. And I'm like, oh gosh, this task that needs to get done in my life or at work or something else. And it gets really tough to be able to get all of that, or to be able to just manage it all in RAM instead of putting it into a hard drive is really hard. Like if you're just constantly trying to juggle it around upstairs instead of putting it down somewhere. So I write all that down. And then every day, what I do is I'll start at the end of the day. Or actually in the beginning of the day, I look at, no, let's start at the end. So when I finish my day, I check off everything that I did that day. I look at everything that needs to happen the next day, and I plan to do that. Right. So I say, okay, I'm going to do this at this time, this at this time. These are my tasks. I usually then always allow for flex time within my day. And that my schedule has to be somewhat flexible, but I allow for that flex time. So then life's uncertainties can come in and it doesn't throw everything else off. If I have that in place, and before I even go to bed, I already know what I need to do and what's most important the next day, then it's really easy for me to fall asleep. And I don't even care if my phone buzzes or something else like that, because I already know what's most important and I know what I need to do to stay on the right track. So that's something that I do that really helps. Then in the morning, I can check in on that and do whatever else I need, but then I don't have a stressful morning as well. It's a really profoundly impactful thing for me. So that really helps. The only other thing that I would say is if you have a lot of tasks that are on your plate, you will not live a stress-free life. Like if there are things that need to be done and you keep pushing them off, you'll always have compromised sleep and compromised recovery, and it will affect your training and it will affect everything. When you're out on the bike or when you're there on the trainer and you're doing your intervals, you won't be thinking about the work. You'll be thinking about that one thing that you still need to do that you haven't done for a month. So there is a lot to be said for just the things that you can control and do. Try to do those as soon as you can, because as you're mentioning, Matt, life throws curveballs at you, and this new job with a lot of stress, that's enough curveballs on its own. So if you have anything else that you can take care of to take off that plate, it just helps so much. Like let those shoes drop, take care of them, get them done. It just feels so good. And then you can actually live life with a lot less stress. So, and that's me telling myself to continue landscaping the backyard while I'm at it. So
during high volume.
During high volume. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This was a really good episode of the Ask a Unlicensed Therapist podcast. Yeah.
We're sure this happens sometimes.
I wanted to say one more thing for Matt is push yourself down to low volume. We have some interesting data that shows that various volumes are very effective for different things, especially when you, like John said, if you could ride less and actually decrease your work stress, you're going to get more out of the low volume and decreasing your work stress than you would out of increased work stress and mid volume. So rather than barely dial it back, I feel like we must say this 3 times a podcast. Instead of doing the bare minimum, start with the easiest and ramp yourself back up. So start with low volume, and if you feel really good and you can get extra rides in, that's awesome. But if you're stressing yourself out with exactly, you can add a train now workout. But start easy and then ramp yourself back up rather than like really toe the line of the knife's edge between I'm super stressed at work, but I can still fit in the mid volume. Like it could work, but why not get the sure thing and then ramp yourself back forward?
Yes. That's such a great point, Pete. Like don't think that just because you step down from high to mid, that is like, oh gosh, well, I'm even getting slower at that. Don't think that way at all. Allow yourself plenty of breathing room. It's better. And also, once again, we're talking about stress. And then if we don't hit our workouts, like we should hit our workouts, then we add even more stress onto ourselves. Like the one thing that should be de-stressing us starts to add stress, and that's bad. So put yourself in a position to succeed. Don't put yourself in a position where you're most likely to fail, right? Yep. Increase those odds. One of and a quick verbiage thing to describe what I was saying of having tasks that you haven't taken care of. A lot of people talk about that in terms of closing loops. Like how many loops do you have that are partially closed and not closed? And if you have a ton of those going on, just close them so they can be put away and just get those things done. So awesome practical advice. Let's go into Kirk's question. He says, and then we'll have some time for live questions as well. So if you're joining us live, go ahead and submit those live questions. We might even jump back into the rapid fire if we can. So Kirk says, I love the app and the podcast. I'm a 24-year-old slow roadie. Slow's relative. Kirk, you may not be. So it says, with 2 kids and a busy life. I started cycling 3 years ago just as a hobby. Since then, I've realized how fun it is to be able to ride at a fast pace and keep up with the local groups. It's been really hard to train with all life has offered this past year. Because of the lack of training and bad food choices, I've gotten a lot weaker. I don't count calories, and I'm probably about 20 pounds overweight. My question is, I'm new to this stuff. How do I get started with eating healthier and counting calories? How do I know how much I should be eating? Also, any tips on picking my training back up full-time would be much appreciated. I think this is probably like a really diverse panel here to answer this one because Alex, you're probably the most data-driven approach to this. I'm pretty close to that. And then we have Pete, the nutrition guy. Ivy, I know that you take a different approach to nutrition as well.
Fast and loose, so. Ivy.
Fast. I love it. Let's start with Alex. What advice would you give to Kirk in this situation of just trying to get started with this about making those healthier choices, counting calories, all that stuff?
I think the first thing I would do is I take a stepped approach. I wouldn't change diet too much. I would just get back into riding regularly and kind of see where you level out with that. I mean, in my mind, he could be so used to riding and then his eating habits didn't change when his riding dropped off. So he's fueling for something he's no longer doing. So I would just get back into riding, pick a low volume plan and get after it. And see where you are there as kind of like a first step. And then from there, I think the second most important thing is just fueling the work, so make sure you're taking a gel or a banana or something. I normally do every 30 minutes on some pretty like endurance style rides and try to figure out what you need for those bigger things. And then kind of just one thing at a time. I think it can be super intimidating, which is also why I don't really do a deep dive into what I do. It's a very controlled personality thing, and I think a lot of people would get very discouraged doing it. And for me, it's just a level of control, and it's not something that happened overnight, right? It's not like I went from 0 to 100 with this. I think the first step is understanding what foods do for you and what certain foods are. So like like lean meats are protein, veggies are proteins with a little bit of carbs, and potatoes are carbs, kind of just like at the base of what macros they provide for you. And then trying to get those as much from real foods as you can, because the micronutrients are just as important. So I think on a face value, we all know like a healthy quote unquote right choice from an unhealthy one. And that doesn't mean that you can't go and have Popeyes one night. I just think it's something where it's like, if you make mostly good decisions and fuel mostly well, and then, you have 2 kids and you want to have pizza night, like go for it. Like it is what it is, I think, at the end of the day. So I would just get back on the bike, get back riding, see how you feel, see where you end up. And then from there, try to figure out what works with your personality type. Because me personally, I weigh everything. I know exactly how many carbs I'm eating each day. And for me, it's checking a box. It's like, sweet, I fueled today perfectly. But I mean, Jen and I, sometimes it's just like, 7 o'clock at night and we don't know what to do for dinner and we DoorDash something. It's life. And I'm not perfect, and I never claim to be. I think it's just, on the whole, if you have a plan of attack, whether that's tracking food or, this is how I'm going to fuel my rides, and this is my pre-ride, and this is a breakfast that I like, and it's good. And then again, like you said, with your schedule, leave a little bit of wiggle room, I think it's just understanding on the whole how to fuel that work. And I would be more scared to not fuel the work than I would be to have some more food in the system.
Ivy, forgive me, Ivy, what would you have to add to that, and anything that you found to help you on this approach of finding healthy nutrition choices?
Yeah. I wonder what Kirk considers to be bad food choices. Is it like, like having like only a couple super enormous meals a day, or is it like repeated like food that's not like really nourishing you, or like not really meeting your calorie or nutrition goals? Like what's going on that's making them make like bad food choices? And so yeah, my like fast and loose approach, I'm gonna plug Amber's 8 principles of healthy nutrition with Amber Pierce article, because like they are really like good fundamentals that are kind of generalized. Things like nourish yourself, don't diet during your workouts, good hydration, don't let guilt be part of it, because those things I think can be really helpful in just like general nutrition that for people like me who don't have a hard time focusing on like the super specifics. I mean, there are a couple of specifics that I have, like meeting protein and carbohydrate goals per day. But then after that, like taking a really like broad stroke approach into like meeting my needs has helped me.
Awesome. Pete, what would you add?
This is a good question, because we have gotten this question a lot, and I've gotten it a lot specifically. And one of the easiest things to do is remind yourself that you should just be shooting for eating healthier more often than you're eating not healthy, right? Like that's a great starting point. If you know that there is if you think that you are making bad choices in any capacity, start to try to make less of those. And the goal would be like an 80 or 90% of the time. Like that keeps you sane and living, and keeps your friends and family happy. but start with eating healthy more often than not. And one of the tricks that I've seen that work really well is pick one day a week, usually your hardest workout day, and adhere to what you would say would be a great, not perfect, great setup for your workout. And that's breakfast, lunch, dinner, workout, fueling, pre and post. And start with one day, because if you can nail one day and you can feel the difference in your body and in your workout, it'll make it so much easier for you to be like, man, that felt really nice. Like, also I slept better, my mental acuity was better, like all these things. And that makes, like, nailing something makes it much easier for you to like kind of shoot for that again and again and again. And when I started, kind of the biggest difference that ever made, or that I did personally, was I started treating all workout days like race days, like Alex does. And because if you fuel properly and you set yourself up to feel the best, my training went through the roof. Like, I started training much better and I felt better the rest of the week too. So start with one day, and I would say don't worry about your overweight. You're not 20 pounds overweight. You're going to eat what you need to eat, and your body will get to where you get to. And if you're nailing workouts, the pounds don't matter. But start with one day and start just overall trying to make healthier choices and shoot for greater than 50% of the time. And then only shoot for one day of nailing the workout on a low volume plan. And then the rest you can kind of fit in with your busy life schedule. But doing one day that's just for you and for your workout makes a big difference in how you're going to feel.
I just want to highlight what Ivy said there on Amber's article, which we'll link down below to that. We've already linked it in the live chat if you're watching, so you can check that out. But I'm just going to recap what our principles are, and then you can go and read them. But number 1 is nourish yourself. Number 2, don't diet during your workouts. Number 3, fuel yourself with carbohydrates. Number 4, practice good hydration habits. Number 5, emphasize nutrient density off the bike, but don't overlook enjoyment. Number 6, guilt never needs to be a part of the food equation. 7, just like Ivy said, great job, Ivy. And then 7, practice moderation. And 8, practice fueling to improve. And Ivy has great stuff, or forgive me, Amber has great points on all of that that you can read. So check out that article. In terms, just something I want to add is, you asked, like, how do I know how much I should be eating? And something that I've found helpful with this is there's different, if you're eating like, if you're eating a lot of Oreos and a lot of, the typical like junk foods, those foods are so tricky to us because they make us feel satiated after we eat a bunch of them, but then it's also fleeting because then we don't feel full like very quickly thereafter. But it also doesn't give our body the sort of energy that it needs to be able to perform well. So it's really hard to get a bearing on what is eating enough, because in most cases too, those are really calorie dense. So you're getting a ton of calories, but you're effectively starving yourself from what your body needs to be able to improve. You're getting plenty of calories on paper, right? Because many times they're particularly fatty foods, but you're not getting, you're starving your body from what it needs to actually make improvements, right? So when you can shift, and like Pete said, when you start making more healthy choices than not healthy choices, just over time, as that starts to change and you start to do that, you'll start to notice how differently those meals make you feel. And I almost wouldn't say, look at what, use a basal metabolic rate calculator and use that and start with that and then go from there. Because the tricky part is when you're trying to satisfy that equation and reach that number with different foods, you're going to have very different experiences. So instead it would be to fuel with healthy food first, and then get to the point where that's the routine and that's normal. And you're starting to eat that regularly. And then at that point, I promise you, it will become very apparent when you don't have enough fuel on board and you're not taking it enough, because you'll notice it in your workouts. And then as you add more, you'll get there. I've been measuring my food the first week of every month this year. And then I've also done it more than that. And I've found like the absolute, I guess, trouble that you can fall into when you try to stick very closely to that number that is your basal metabolic rate plus whatever calories you burn. And if you do that, it's still, and many times you'll wake up the next day and you won't feel as ready. And there's a lot of life stress, like we've talked about, that comes in. and all that takes a toll. So sometimes you need more. You need more nutrients. You need more rest. You need more recovery. You need more health coming in, right? So I would emphasize going for that, fueling your workouts and with healthy choices. And Amber's article is just awesome on it. Anything else to add before we jump into some of the live questions? Cool. Okay. This first one is from John. He says, so I signed up for the adaptive training beta within the first hour of the announcement a month ago now. Awesome. Good to hear. We're adding people all the time. And he says, I've been a TrainerRoad user for 3 years. Recently have failed 4 workouts in a row. He's mentioning doesn't have access to adaptive training yet. How should I adjust to compensate? Failing 4 in a row is insanely discouraging. John, if you listen to this podcast that we just recorded, which I assume you are since you're listening live, there's a whole lot of things that we covered in terms of recovery, nutrition, all those other things. First thing that I do when I fail a workout is I start to run through that flow chart. How is my sleep? How is my nutrition? How is the life stress that's being injected into my life? Was this workout uniquely hard or different than what I'm used to? Was it back to back? I start to look for all the reasons that could have contributed to that. And then if I am failing like 4 workouts in a row, I'm taking time off. So I'm not going to then try to find a workout that's hard that I can succeed at so that I can recover my pride or something. Instead, I'm going to say, oh, no, I need rest. So I'm going to take some rest. But be systematic in how you break it down. What were the things that contributed to this? And that's what I would say. Any tips from anybody else?
I think you have to be realistic. If you're demanding something yourself that's not possible, like actually I just retook a ramp test and dropped like 40 watts or something with my hand and various other things that are happening. And I knew I could have probably cherry picked some easy workouts that I could have succeeded at my old FTP, even though it just wasn't real. Like I had to be realistic and be like, it doesn't matter what it is. It matters that I can actually sustain my training and do some workouts. So I knew that meant start with something easy and back it off. And I just took 10 days off. I think I crashed on Friday or anyways, long enough that I felt pretty awful when I got on the bike. And just now's the time where I think for John, I would take a week off and then start fresh, and you'll be so much better off. And we can even throw in some train now workouts if you're feeling like you want, if there's nothing that you can point to that should decrease your performance right now, let's do some train now workouts and see if those are attainable. And if they are, then it's probably something that is more in line with the workouts you were trying to do. And if you can't succeed at those also, it's definitely time for a week off and kind of a reset, and start fresh.
Agreed. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah. Jonathan, you mentioned like going through that like checklist of sleep hygiene, nutrition, life stress. And I think that the more that as athletes, we normalize having those check-ins when workouts go well and when training is going well, the better lens we have to look at like why workouts might be going poorly. The more that we like check in about success, the better we'll be able to like look at those things, you know, in the scope of like, well, why did we fail? Like go through those things. Well, now I know what it looks like when I succeed, what those things look like. And you'll be better able to identify where they might've gone wrong.
Be analytical on your good days and your bad days. Yeah, I like it. Cool. Alex, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that covers it. If I failed 4 workouts in a row, that'd be a big red flag for me. Yeah, I'd take some time off, and it'd just be an indicator that I probably need some rest or some extended time off, or that maybe the workouts weren't aligned with like where they should, like they're not hitting the right zones type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Jan has 2 questions. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Jan. I apologize if not. Perhaps it's Jan. I don't know, but I'll say Jan. It says, I always end up with more TSS on outside rides, although I follow the instructions. Is it common? It probably is, because even though you follow the instructions for the workouts, you have a touch more in terms of the inside of the outside, or you're spiking more, or, you know, there's just more variables to it. Alex, what do you say to that?
I see this a lot when it's converted to ranges. So the TSS is calculated based on you hitting the center of the range. So if you're topping out the ranges, you'll actually accumulate more TSS than it planned for you.
Yeah, great point. His other question, is it a good idea to have have intensity factor on screen for a race to not blow up? I think that's probably a more disconnected metric to have, because you can arrive at an IF in many different ways. So, and you can blow up in many different ways. Pete, what say you?
Yeah, when I saw this question, I sort of laughed. You can make the perfect IF NP breaker workout where you just do 40 seconds all out and then a minute and 20 coasting, and then watch what number you can get your IF to. It can be crazy. So it's not an accurate representation of kind of the stress you're feeling. The one thing I have done, I don't look at it during a race, but kind of understanding what your last 5 minutes of normalized power was, like mentally, you can get a better barometer of what's happening in the race, and that's more indicative of how you're going to blow up rather than the IF. If you're a triathlete and your IF is off by more than 0.05, that's a great example where maybe you do need your IF. If you're doing a 100-mile TT, throw IF on there and you'll save yourself a lot of discomfort at the end. But if it's a race that you're
yes, a lot of math too in the head. Yeah.
If you're not in control of the race situation, it doesn't matter what your IF says. Either you're going to be there or you're not going to be there.
Pete, you said something when we were doing this e-pacing, because the power wasn't that high for me on that e-pacing. Like I expected it to be higher for how hard it was. But you said something that I really liked. You said there's so many ways to arrive at that normalized power number. And what we just did is probably one of the hardest ways to do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. When you're looking at averages, there's effectively an infinite way to arrive at that average. So when you look at that, especially something with IF is probably even more disconnected than that. So there's so many ways that you could arrive at it. I wouldn't put it on. So yeah. Ivy, sorry, I interrupted. I think you were going to say something.
No, I think I was just going to agree with Pete that this is assuming that this is a race scenario that you can control, which is mm-hmm. There's one or two circumstances in which you could benefit from that information, but LOL at doing a crit and being in the breakaway and that you can't control and looking at your IF and being whoop, guess I got to get out of here. See you guys later.
See you guys.
Dropping back to the field,
So, yeah, if only, yeah. Right? Yeah. I want to go into Billy's question. He says, thoughts on endurance ride fuel, solid food, burrito, chips, sandwiches, gel, liquid calories. Ivy, you're nodding your head. You start.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Love this for you. Yeah. Check all of those. I mean, it depends upon where you're riding. If you're doing a really big endurance mountain bike ride, you can't expect to have a burrito stand. And so it might be harder to pack. You have to think about what you have space for. Chips aren't great to ride with for solid food because they take up so much space and get crumbly. But in terms of the types of fuel that you want, Jonathan.
Sorry, I was thinking just pouring the chips from the bag. It's that's the only tactic at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
They also have a ton of fat too, right? So chips are usually really fatty. So then that isn't ideal ride food, usually causes gut discomfort,
Yeah, but there are solid foods that I think are really beneficial to have on endurance ride. I think I would be really just sad if I did a really long endurance ride on just liquid calories or gels. Treat yourself to.
Welcome to our life for Alex and I.
My gosh, I don't like that. I do not like that.
I think there's I don't know what it is. I think solid foods have a positive connotation to them, and then gels and blocks don't. For me, it's just my gut can handle it, and I know it's exactly what I need at the time. And especially on those longer, bigger days, I know I'm going to be eating a lot before and after it. So it's I have plenty of time for some delicious solid food. I could never imagine like not only the cafe legs after, but stopping for a burrito in the middle of a ride would just like blow all my motivation. Like, okay, I'm ready for a nap now. But I do take size into consideration on these longer rides. So I do a lot of the Cliff blocks for longer rides because like one sleeve is 40 grams of carbs, and I can probably fit like 10 of those in one of my pockets. So it's like that'd keep me going for at least 5 hours just on that alone. And then I've been known to do my Usui pack on the back with just water, and then I put Morton in my bottle. So I personally, like, I know there's a lot of positivity and excitement around starting with solid foods, but my gut's never been a problem with just plowing my way through different forms of sugar. So that's kind of what I do. I mean, my Leadville strategy will be an SIS gel on the top of every hour and then a bottle of Morton 320 every hour. So I'll go through 6 and a bit bottles of Morton and 6 and a bit gels. And I'm sure my stomach will be just fine.
You ever get tired of, apart from like, you know, normalizing your gut to like take on those kinds of sugars and calories in that way, do you ever get tired of, like, do you ever just like want something like savory or like, or spicy or like any other flavor? Like, do you get tired of just like sugar all the time?
Not personally. I definitely like swap out flavors. I'll purposely choose a different flavor, like 4 different flavors of gel and like different flavors of the blocks. But in terms like, it's not even something that I like feel like like I've heard Jonathan talk like palate fatigue is like the lowest reason on the totem pole to like not fuel kind of thing. So it's like I never experienced that. Like I choose flavors I really enjoy. Like salted watermelon is probably my go-to for Cliff blocks. Not only is it a delicious flavor, but like it tends to always be soft, no matter if it's cold, hot. I don't know if it's like the extra sodium in it or what, but that flavor always is my go-to. And then I'll switch it up with strawberry or we got I forgot what it's called, like the soda one that Jen wanted. Yeah, I just have a variety of flavors, but it's never something that I've struggled with in terms of like, oh, I can't have another gel. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
it is what it is, I guess.
Billy, I'd say a couple of things on this. Number one, the more you get used to drinking those sort of liquid calories, the less of a problem it will become to just do that. And the faster it will make you because it's like most efficient fuel, so to speak. So, but yes, you should. I totally went through that like a curve, a very steep curve where I was like, I need variety. I need all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? You need to not suck at your races more than you need variety and like flavor. So, and I just like, so I really pushed myself. Yeah, I know, harsh truths. But I pushed myself in that direction. And then what it ended up doing is I got to the point where like, oh, it's just totally normal. And I don't need any variety and flavor for like, even at Leadville, I was fine with just taking in the same Marten from beginning to end. So, and all that is sugar. So
Yeah.
just sugar, water, and sugar gel. That's like all. There is no flavor to any of it. And it's fine. You get used to it. And I just know that like the one thing is more fat content, the tougher it's going to be for you to be able to effectively utilize that fuel quickly for energy on the bike. In addition to that, it could also cause problems with absorbing anything else in your gut when you load it full of fat as well. So that's something you have to watch out for. But
if you're listening, Keegan, don't listen to that. Keep fueling with Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts, keep going. Yeah, you got it. Don't stop. But the overall thing though, if those sort of nutrition choices are taking away from your enjoyment on the bike, then that's bad. Like you can't let that remove your joy of the bike, right, Pete?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is endurance ride fuel to me spans anything from 2.5 hours of endurance pace to I've done some awful long rides that it mattered more about keeping me alive than it did about what the fat ratio of my carbohydrate to fat ratio was. And I've been, I don't know if it's, I was just thinking about both you and Alex are slimmer than I am. And sometimes if I don't get food, I'll die. Like I'm just going to die on Highway 50 sometime. And so I've done long, like I rode the Colorado Trail and I had a lot of solid food on that, in addition to a bunch of high carbohydrate liquid and like ride food. And it was more because I needed anything I could get. But if I'm doing there's a joke ride in Santa Cruz called the Chili Reno Super Burrito ride, where you ride like 75 miles, then you eat a Chili Reno Super Burrito, and then you climb up one of the grades on the backside of Los Gatos. And if you can make it to the top without throwing up, then you win.
I was built for this ride. I'm ready.
We can go do it, Ivy. We can do it.
I've been training for this my whole life.
When's everybody coming to visit me?
Let's do it. Seriously. But yeah, I think remind yourself of what the goal of the ride is. If the goal of the ride is to get lots of hours and to enjoy yourself, don't put artificial limits on what you can and can't eat. If it is for a specific purpose and for performance, I would say steer towards something that is more applicable to what you're going to do in the long term. So absolutely. There's fun rides that involve burritos and chips and Bloody Marys. And then there's rides where you're going to do 4 hours at endurance pace and it's going to be hard. And you really should focus on on your carbohydrate intake for that 4 hours. And those are way different things. And everybody can do both of those. You're not just beholden to one or the other.
For sure. The last thing I want to add to that too is, if you are going to be doing something like extremely long, that is, like and the pace is not where you're like trying to do an Everesting world record or something like that, then you're going to mix in some different stuff for sure. So I don't want to make it seem like if I had to do that terrible Everesting again, that I would do it with just sugar the whole way through. I probably wouldn't. So, okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. If you're watching this video right now, give it a thumbs up, because that will help a bunch of other people find it. You can also subscribe, and you can hit the notification bell on YouTube, so that way you get notified every time we post a video. And Maxine and Piper are awesome video editors, are always putting out great content all the time. Subscribe to the TrainerRoad blog, because our content writers, Megan, Sean, Jesse, they're always putting out awesome stuff, the whole team. So check that out. You can also sign up for the adaptive training beta. Please do that. Go to trainerroad.com/AT and subscribe and share this podcast with somebody this week. If one favor to all of us, just share the podcast with somebody this week, and it would be amazing. So thanks, everybody. And we will talk to you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.